Morning.
What did you make of these final 3 episodes of the Harry and Meghan doc?
Well, there was a lot more in these final 3 than in the first 3, but I think we are still left after 6 hours with a lot of unanswered questions. If we go right back to the first opening episode, Harry talks about the level of hate against his wife and his son. And yes, we've had illustrations of the hate, mostly on social media, the hatred against his wife, but none I could see against his son. And that's just one of many, many accusations and allegations throughout the 6 hours that have not been backed up with concrete proof or evidence. And if you're going to say William screamed and shouted at me at the Sandringham summit, well, why did he do that? What was he unhappy about? Did you say something to make him unhappy, or what was the reason? You say Charles lied to you, your father lied to you face to face. Well, what did he say? There's a dramatic section where a text comes in from William and Harry holds it up to Meghan, and shock, horror, they have to hug one another and go out into the garden for a breather. Well, what was in that text? We need names, dates, evidence, proof. And that was not forthcoming.
And in that sense, there weren't the bombshells that maybe the palace were worried may be coming.
Well, there was a lot of nasty stuff about the palace. I mean, I'd like to know who of the palace staff told Meghan, as Meghan says they did, that she was some kind of, it was like, I think they said she said something like a foreign organism.
Yes.
Which had come to this fish that was swimming happily, and suddenly this foreign organism comes along. It didn't look like them or speak like them, and they just wanted it out. I mean, okay, that's a pretty weird way of describing Meghan's situation, quite an insulting way. Who said it? Then we can go to that person, we journalists, and say, did you say that? They call it a documentary. I don't think so.
I mean, it was scathing about William, the King, even the Queen, critical at that Sandringham summit that the Queen just looked on. This was about entertainment, wasn't it? This was about them selling their story, their truth. I just wonder where it goes from here. How many times can you sell this story? I mean, we've got the book coming out in January, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Yes, selling is the correct way of putting it, I think. However, what I always want to know is why. Why did they want to do this? And I think the only answer we got was Meghan at the beginning saying that everyone else is talking about us, so let's hear the story from us. Well, fair enough. If you're invested in Harry and Meghan, that's fine. And towards the end, Harry saying you can't move on to the next chapter without closing or dealing with the first. Now, that may also be true, but most people, when they're dealing with intimate family relationships like this, would close that chapter, I think, in a therapist's room. In fact, we saw them having therapy. But most people wouldn't go and shout about their dirty laundry and make hurtful comments about the other side of the family so publicly, would they? This I still don't understand. I'm very happy that Harry and Meghan have found peace and love and all that they wanted. Look, I knew Harry when he was a little boy. I'm really happy that they've got that. I don't know why they then had to put out so much vitriol.
But I guess the reality of the situation is they're not funded by the taxpayer. They need to earn a living. How are they going to earn a living and keep up this fantastic lifestyle that they have? I guess they have to sell stuff. They have to sell their stories, because what else do people want from them? When they've told their whole story, what do they then do next? Does Meghan go back to acting? Does Harry get a normal job? It's not an option for them, is it?
Oh, it must be terrible, must it, to only have 30 million quid or so in the bank? Oh, and she was a millionaire as well. How shocking. I mean, they didn't like the little 2-bedroom house that they were given in the grounds of the palace at Kensington Palace. That was pokey. I mean, everybody needs 9 bedrooms and 16 bathrooms in a sprawling mansion in Montecito, don't they?
What do you make of the piece, the leading article in the Times today, saying that they should hand back their royal titles? And we've had texts this morning saying exactly that. One person's got in touch here saying that Terence says that I'm a lifelong resident of Sussex. I'll be pleased to see the association with these voluntary exiles severed. Do you think they should hand back their royal titles? Do you think they should take themselves and the family out of the line of succession?
Well, Harry said they had been willing, they'd made that offer to relinquish their titles, but obviously that didn't happen. We don't particularly want to see them stripped of their titles. Charles isn't that kind of person. He's not vindictive. He wouldn't do that. There's no need. But I mean, if they've got any, if they've got any pride, and if they believe in their advocacy for equality, which they go on and on about, I mean, do they really want to be called Duke and Duchess? It seems a bit of a paradox to me.
I'm sure you were at Harry and Meghan's wedding, watching on. I was there working for a broadcaster, covering it for the world. And one thing that I was really struck by on that day as I stood on the long walk in Windsor was the very different people who came out for their wedding. I'd covered so many royal events where you see the same old types of people coming out. And I met people from around the world. I met younger people, diversity. There was so much more diversity, ethnic diversity there. I just wonder, do you sometimes feel like the palace missed a trick with Meghan? There was so much hope, so much optimism, so many people feeling like they had a connection to the royal family that they'd never felt before. That's what they told me on that day. And then it's all gone.
Oh yes, I think it was a massive missed opportunity. I mean, Harry says that in the documentary, and I think it's true. And I do think the palace bears some responsibility. I think they did bend over backwards to make her welcome. They did all they could, and I do take issue with the fact she says she didn't understand how it all worked, and she wasn't given any help. Apparently, she was actually given a dossier of how to behave. But I mean, hey, you're marrying a member of the royal family. Ask him. That would be a good idea. But I do think the palace could have tried harder to make the 50-50 option, the in and out, make it work. But there would have been a lot of complicated negotiation about what kind of out, their privacy moments, how that would be funded. It was complicated, but I think they could have worked harder on that.
Jennie, good to speak to you. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks.
That is the royal commentator, Jennie Bond. And after 9 o'clock this morning, we're going to be speaking to the Times royal correspondent, Valentine Lowe. He's been dragged into this documentary with accusations that a piece that he wrote in the Times newspaper was timed deliberately. It was a calculated smear against Meghan. It was the story that members of her staff had accused her of bullying, and it came around the same time as the Oprah Winfrey documentary. The inference in the Meghan and Harry documentary is that this was timed deliberately to try and get headlines away. And Valentine Lowe says, well, I always said at the time, actually, that was exactly the point. These people said, if I don't speak before the Oprah Winfrey documentary, people are not going to listen to me. So here is my story. Please tell it first. So we'll be speaking to Valentine after 9 o'clock this morning.
It is 7:46 on Friday morning.